Being president means giving speeches, lots of speeches, little speeches, big speeches, speeches that are so important they call them addresses, speeches that are so unimportant they call them remarks. Even in a relatively slow summer week when Congress isn't doing anything and he just got back from a big trip, President Obama does a weekly address. Then he speaks after a meeting with the Prime Minister of New Zealand, and then he speaks at a White House summit, and then he speaks at a reception, and then he speaks with a bunch of NASCAR guys, and then he speaks at a fundraiser. And I mean, that's just a few days, and that's just the stuff that's on the record. But for any president, maybe for this president in particular, for all the speeches that he gives, it is rare to see President Obama appearing to genuinely have a good time when he is giving a speech. But he gave one last night in which he not only was obviously having a really good time, it kind of felt like he was riffing a little bit. I don't know if this was in his prepared remarks, but it didn't feel like it.
It's pretty rare that you encounter people who say that the problem of carbon pollution is not a problem. They may not know exactly how it works. They may, doubt that we can do something about it. But generally, they don't just say, no, I don't believe anything scientists say. Except where? In Congress. In Congress. Folks will tell you climate change is a hoax or a fad or a plot. It's a liberal plot. And then most recently, because many who say that actually know better and they're just embarrassed, they duck the question. They say, hey, I'm not a scientist. Which really translates into, I accept that man-made climate change is real, but if I say so out loud, I will be run out of town by a bunch of fringe elements that think climate science is a liberal plot. So I'm going to just pretend like, I don't know, I can't read. I'm not a doctor either, but if a bunch of doctors tell me that tobacco can cause lung cancer, then I'll say, okay. Right? I mean, it's not that hard. Now, the good news is the American people are wiser than this.
President Obama apparently enjoying himself there, making fun of Congress as the one place on earth where it's fine, it's expected that you don't believe in science. And the construction the president uses there is interesting because he sort of says that Congress is full of Republicans who do actually believe in science, but because they are Republicans in Congress, they have to pretend like they don't believe in it, almost like he's embarrassed for them. President Obama made these remarks last night on the one-year anniversary of his big unveiling of his presidential climate agenda. That was a year ago in a speech at Georgetown that unfortunately was very poorly staged. This was a big, important speech on a really big, important matter. But look, they got the bunting all screwy. That bunting just has a wedgie, and that's the one right over the president. It was a super hot day, no shade. The president had to joke at the top that everybody could take off their jackets. He said, "It's not that sexy." The whole speech, the whole long speech went on for almost an hour. It was punctuated every couple of sentences by a plane flying over the president and drowning out his words because the venue they chose at Georgetown was right on the flight path for National Airport. I mean, they just did not do a great job with the logistics on the rollout of that agenda at that speech a year ago this week. But the president did roll out that agenda a year ago. He reiterated it last night with some glee. But what's now clearly important about that big speech a year ago and about how the president approached this issue is that everything he laid out in that big speech a year ago, everything he laid out in that agenda was stuff that he could basically do himself without Congress. Because, again, Congress is the one place we have to pretend that climate is not changing. But even though Congress has gotten no better on it in the past year, actually, despite popular perceptions, a lot has changed around the politics of this issue, even in Republican politics. I mean, Republicans in Congress are still stuck exactly where they were. But Republicans outside Congress, it's actually been kind of an amazing year for them on this.
People are used to seeing me play the hero.
The public knows Arnold Schwarzenegger from his prolific film career and as a former governor of California.
They see me acting strong and brave, standing up to the toughest bad guys.
Welcome, Governor Schwarzenegger.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
But my career as an action hero was all make-believe. Today, I'm taking on a real-life bad guy, one that threatens all humanity. Climate change.
Climate change is from the Showtime documentary series, The Years of Living Dangerously. And Arnold Schwarzenegger is not alone. Last month, this guy, Jon Huntsman, former governor of Utah, U.S. ambassador to China, 2012 Republican presidential candidate, he authored an op-ed in the New York Times about how Republicans specifically can't ignore climate change. Then there's this guy, former Secretary of the Treasury under President George W. Bush, Hank Paulson. This week, Mr. Paulson joined forces with former New York Mayor Michael Bloomberg and a hedge fund billionaire to release a report they called Risky Business, which basically says climate change is happening. And not only is it happening, it's costing our country billions of dollars. It's an economic issue. Oh, but wait, there's more. Just last week, 4 former cabinet members who served under these Republican presidents, former heads of the EPA under Republican presidents, came out and testified before the Senate Environment Committee saying, yes, climate change is real and Congress should do something about it. It still doesn't look like Congress is going to do something about it anytime soon. But the president, that's him a year ago and him last night, appears to be playing a long game on this, acting on his own where he can, publicly asserting and assuming that Congress will come along someday on this issue. Republicans outside of Congress appear to be proving him right on that, as so many of them are clearly coming along on this issue. And I think this is a big deal. On the issue of public opinion, when the president said last night, the good news is the American people are wiser than this, meaning wiser than Congress, he's talking about something specific there. This is the latest NBC Wall Street Journal poll. People like what the president is doing on his own on this subject, even if Congress is pretending it's all about a conspiracy theory. The public is kind of down with it. They kind of like it. They strongly support what the president is doing, even though Congress is furious about it and treating it like a scandal. And an increasing and large majority of the public is even willing to pay more for their utility bills if that's what we need to do in order to deal with this problem. Public opinion going the president's way. The opinions of almost all elected Democrats going the president's way. The opinions of increasing numbers of very well-known Republicans going his way, as long as they are not Republicans in Congress. As long as they're Republicans who can't actually make a decision on this. Congressional Republicans still stand unified on being pretty flat earth on this subject. But in the year since President Obama started saying he's going to act on this issue with or without them, Congressional Republicans have turned into the nation's lagging indicator on this issue. Everybody else on board. Now it's time for the last word with Lawrence O'Donnell. Thanks for being with us.